All right, good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. Open in a word of prayer. Dear Lord, I thank you for this day. Lord, I thank you for this time that we can meet together to hear from your word, to sing praise to you. Lord, I thank you for the safety you've given. Lord, I pray for those that are still driving on the roads, and for us as we go back home. Lord, I just pray that you would give safety there. Lord, that we would be looking to you for it and not trusting ourselves. Lord, I pray that you would be with us tonight. Lord, work in our hearts, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. We're going to sing song 128, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear. 128. It came upon the midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from Him the gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lowly plains they bend on hovering wing, and ever o'er its babble sounds the blessed angels sing. And ye beneath life's crushing load, whose forms are bending low, who toil along the climbing way with painful steps and slow, look now, for glad and golden hours come swiftly on the wing. Oh, rest beside the weary road, and hear the angels sing. Lo, the days are hastening on, by prophets seen of old, when with the ever-circling years shall come the time foretold, when the new heaven and earth shall own the Prince of Peace their King, and the whole world send back the song which now the angels sing.
All right, we're in Proverbs chapter 20 tonight. I've had a fun day that harkens back to the beginning of the pandemic, when I banged my head against the wall all day trying to set up the network here at the church and the camera and all of that stuff, because our internet went down at the church, and I spent multiple hours today trying to figure out what was wrong. Thought it was a router. Wasn't a router. Well, no, it was a router. Just wasn't the router I thought it was. But we got it all back up and running, and on my way over here tonight, I slipped, so I'm going to hold my arm kind of still. It kind of look funny, but moving my arm doesn't feel the best, so I'm keeping it still. Proverbs 20 tonight, beware of the double standard. Hey, that's almost a title I put online. I didn't want to get my notes. Beware of a double standard. Proverbs 20, several verses deal with a double standard, and as I was looking through them, even some verses that are well known kind of struck me in a different light. as I considered that repetition of the double standard. It's interesting because verse 10 says, diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. And verse 23, diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord, and a false balance is not good. That there's a repetition of the same diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord in this chapter. But beware of a double standard. We use double standards all the time. We're naturally going to use double standards in our life. We can see it in politics. This Sunday night, President Biden decided to pardon his son Hunter for any crimes he committed or may have committed in the last 11 years. I shouldn't say the last 11 years. It's the last 10 years and 11 months and the next month, because the pardon goes all the way through New Year's Eve, which makes for some good jokes. Like Hunter asked his dad, hey, could you make sure that pardon covers New Year's Eve? Because, I'm thinking I might have some problems. But for years and months on end, President Biden says, nope, I won't pardon my son. No one is above the law. The Democratic Party is a party of fairness and abide by the law. And now Democrats and Republicans alike are ripping what the president did because it shows the double standard. Well, is that a fair rip? Is that fair that they're turning and saying, well, you complained about other people doing it, but you're doing it yourself? That is the definition of politics in our nation. The party in power complains about the party not in power. The party not in power always complains about the party in power and what they do. We live by double standards all the time. Back to verse 10. Solomon tells us, diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. Well, in an agricultural type society and a society based on trade, diverse weights and diverse measures are ways to cheat people. You would have one weight for when you were buying something and one weight when you were selling something. One weight when you were measuring out other people's money, and a different weight that you would use weighing out your own money. Because as opposed to the digital scales we might have today, the balance that they would have used, you put your weight on one side and what you're weighing out on the other, and when it's level, that's when it's equal. And a double standard is abomination to the Lord. Diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. Now, verse 11, I think most of the kids probably know Proverbs 20:11. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his works are pure and whether they be right. Whether his work be pure and whether it be right. Take that in the context of the diverse weights and the diverse measures. Even a child is known by his doings. Hypocrisy is easily seen. When we have a double standard, it is easy for other people to see. Now, we're going to find out later in the passage that having a double standard ourselves is hard for us to see, but it's easy for other people to see. Diverse weights and measures are alike an abomination to the Lord. Even a child is known by his doing. Verse 12 says, the hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord hath made even both of them. It is easy to see a double standard. What we hear, God made. What we see with, God made. He's given us observational tools to be able to interact with the world around us. And it's easy to see the hypocrisy. It's easy to see the double standard. A double standard is abomination to the Lord. Now we go down just a couple of verses to verse 14. And Solomon says, it is not, saith the buyer, but when he is gone his way, then he boasteth. Now, this is the common way of cheating people, and it's a common way. If you've ever seen these shows where they take, I don't think I've seen one in recent years, where they take something and they try to trade it for something better. They start with a paper clip and they end up with a house. Well, how do they do that? Well, they go and when they're trading for something, they tell the person they're trying to trade with how awful the item is that they have and how great the item is that they're trading for it. And then after they trade, they turn around and say how awesome that item is that they just traded for. It's a double standard, changing the way we view something, whether it's ours or whether we're trying to get it. We need to be fair in our judgment, not one standard for me and one standard for another. The best car buying experience I ever had, hands down, has got to be the 93 Honda Accord I bought. I went to look at this car. The guy was asking $1,300 for it. And I went to look at it, and I go, oh, that's a really old car. It's probably rusted. And I looked at it. It wasn't rusted. It needed some severe repairs. I don't even think I knew about the timing belt when I picked it up, but it was overdue on a timing belt, and those are fun to do. But I knew it needed brakes. I just didn't know that a brake job on a 93 Accord is like a $1,200 job because of the amount of labor it requires. So I looked at it and thought, well, it only needs brakes. And an axle. It needed a new front axle. I'm like, well, those aren't hard. Not a big deal. And I told the guy, I was planning on offering you less than $1,300, but the car is worth $1,300. So, well, why would you do that? Because I shouldn't have a different standard for me than I have for someone else. I shouldn't say, I'll give you $1,000. I only think it's worth $1,000, and then come home and tell people what a great deal I got on the car. I gave him what he was. I offered him what he was asking for it. Now, I thought it was probably worth a little more than he was asking, but I'm not going to tell him he should up his price. I gave him what he was asking. I wasn't cheating him. And actually, when I found out how much work was required, I probably didn't get the best of deals, but since I worked on it myself, it was an awesome deal. When I told him that, he turns to me and he says, I'll take $1,200 for it. I told him I would pay his asking price because the car was worth it, and he told me he'd take $100 less. We had both a buyer and a seller that wasn't going to play a double standard in the transaction. Best car buying experience I've ever had. He was honest, I was honest. We both walked away happy. Now, he might have thought I got the bad end of a deal since he willingly went down $100 in price. I don't know. But both of us were using the same standard to judge. He wasn't going to walk away and say, I ripped that guy off. He felt good about the price he sold it to me for. I wasn't going to say I ripped him off. We both felt good about the price that it was sold for. Why do we need to use the same standard? Because the Bible tells us, as you would that men would do unto you, do ye likewise to them also. Would I want someone selling me a car to cheat me? No. Does that mean I've never been cheated buying a car? No, I've probably been cheated multiple times buying a car. But I don't ever want to cheat someone selling a car. One time I was selling a van, and the van had this awful thing that I couldn't figure out. Didn't know as much about cars as I do now. I'd probably like to try to track it down now. It's a 1998 Ford Windstar. And if you put the gas pedal more than halfway down, the engine choked and sputtered, and it wouldn't get out of its own way. It was fine if you put the gas pedal halfway down or less. Would have been a great car to let teenagers drive, but none of my teenagers were old enough to drive it at that point. When I went to sell it, I had it out front, and I put an ad somewhere. I can't remember where it was. $800 for this car. Guy came to look at it. I told him about the problem that if you put the gas pedal more than halfway down, it chokes and sputters. I think it has to do with the sensor or the engine control module. I told him everything that was wrong with the car before he even looked at it. Like, I want to show you this, 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 and this. So as we walked around, I showed him everything that was wrong with the car. And he turned to me and he says, wow, I was really hoping to find something to get you to lower your price, but I can't find anything you didn't tell me. Why? I wanted to have a good standard. I wanted to feel good about selling a car that I knew didn't run perfectly. He goes, I'd really like to talk you down. So I said, hey, listen, if you come back tomorrow morning, I'll sell it to you for $700. I'll knock $100 off the price, but I just listed it today. I'm not selling it below the asking price today. I've had 3 other people call on it, and it wasn't a lie. He goes, oh. And he kind of shook as he tried to figure out what he wanted to do, and he wrote me a check for the full amount. He said, you told me everything that was wrong with the car. It is not, saith the buyer, but when he is gone his way, then he boasteth. Now, you say, well, I haven't bought or sold much, so I don't have to worry about that. But it's not just in purchases. How often do we judge other people by a different standard, where something that they've done or said or accomplished or an ability that they have, and we say, oh, I guess that's okay, I guess. I could do better. You know, we kind of think in our head, yeah, that's not bad. And then we celebrate ourselves for achieving something lesser than that because we applaud ourselves more highly than we applaud other people. That standard needs to be equally applied. We need fairness in our judgments, whether it's grades, talents, work. Like, well, yeah, I guess you did an okay job cleaning that floor. Next time we clean the floor that well, we're like, see the floor I cleaned? It's never been that spotless. Where's the different standard come from? It's natural. Beware of the double standard. We do it automatically when we boast in ourselves. Down to verse 22. Say not thou, I will recompense evil, but wait on the Lord, and he shall save thee. Like, wait a second, how does this have to do with the double standard? We'll get there. But Solomon tells us we're not to judge evil. There's a very good reason why we're not to judge evil. It says, say not, I will recompense evil. Why isn't it our job to recompense evil? Number one reason it's not our job to recompense evil is God is judge. He's more powerful, smarter, wiser than all of us. But also, we tend to have a double standard. If we're going to recompense for evil, we're going to recompense evil for things that aren't actually evil because we're going to judge them wrong. My favorite example is driving. It was fun. Is it Monday? Did Monday went to Brockton? And on the way back, someone pulled out in front of me with very little room on snowy roads. I'm like, oh no. Got it slowed down in time. I could see them when they pulled out. They could see me and they pulled out. Then I got to thinking, I wonder if they were on a snowy driveway and they had gotten a running start and it was either pull out in front of me or slide into my path and not be out of the way at all. Like, oh. Now, the double standard would be they pulled out in front of me and they didn't leave me enough room. But if that was me in the snowy driveway, I would be, I had to do what I had to do to get out of there. It's a double standard that we naturally apply. We're not to judge evil. It's a double standard to judge others. Now, that doesn't just come with people doing evil. New Testament tells us, judge not, lest ye be judged. We're not to judge others. It's natural for us to judge others because we want to make ourselves look better. We want to feel better about ourselves. But there's a double standard whenever we judge someone else. That's what makes judging someone else such a big deal, other than the fact that it's God's job, and when we judge someone else, we're taking over his job. So, say not, I will recompense evil. And that's where we get followed up again. Diverse weights are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good. Right on the heels of saying don't judge. What should we do instead of judge? Wait, verse 22, on the Lord, and he shall save thee. So, verse 22, God is the judge of evil and the giver of salvation. He is the one that judges evil and the one that gives mercy. You ever notice when we go to judge other people, we're not normally very quick to give out the mercy? We're quick to judge, but slow to the mercy. There's a double standard. We give ourselves mercy, but not others. If we go back to the pardoning of Hunter Biden, it was interesting that even some Democrats said at this point, President Biden should pardon incoming President Trump, or President-elect Trump, for all of the things that he was convicted of, because he said the Justice Department has picked on him because of his name. It does sound an awful lot like what happened to Trump, where he got in trouble for documents, but Biden didn't. He got in trouble for, I think what he said about Hunter Biden at one point was, it was a crime that no one was hurt, which is kind of like Trump overvaluing some of his properties. It was a crime that no one got hurt. The bank got paid back. So he should pardon them. Well, why didn't Biden pardon Trump? Because we're lousy at judging others. We have a double standard. We can look and we can see it easily in politicians, but we don't see it easily in ourselves. Verse 23, it's not good to judge unequally. Well, obviously, false weights, diverse measures are abomination to the Lord. But then verse 24, man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? When we take that back up to the recompensing evil, how can a man understand his way? It is hard to see your own faults. If we judge ourselves very liberally, that we say, I had the best of intentions, I did the best I could, I did this. When we judge other people, all bets are off. And so we look at that and say, then I need to be fair in my judgment of other people. It's interesting, it doesn't say we're to be fair in our judgment of other people. It says we're not to judge other people, because that's the only way we can be fair about it. We excuse ourselves because we know the why behind it. We don't excuse others because we assume the worst in them. Man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? Say not, I will recompense evil. When we recompense evil, we would find that we often are the one perpetrating the evil because we've misjudged someone and done wrong. Beware of the double standard. It's an abomination to the Lord. We need to be fair in how we judge others using the same standard. Now, are fair in our judgment, not judgment of others, but fair of our judgment, that we treat people the way we want to be treated. And then hands off on judgment. We don't recompense evil. And the reason we don't recompense evil is because we're going to use a false standard. We're going to use a bad standard. My favorite illustration back in the day when I took homiletical preaching in college, I had a book of sermon illustrations. I don't know if you ever had one of those, Al. There's all sorts of books out there. I've got one up in my room. It's called The Humorous Mr. Lincoln. It's got a bunch of Lincoln quotes. He's got a bunch of them on the internet these days that he didn't say. But I was flipping through one time, preaching through Romans chapter 2, judge not lest ye be judged, and I came across a story of a baker. And the baker was being, no, it wasn't the baker. It was the farmer, the dairyman, that was being put on trial because he was cheating people by selling them lesser and lesser amounts of butter. Their 1 pound of butter kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so the dairyman's up on the stand, and he's being questioned. He says, are you knowingly reducing the amount of your butter that you're selling? He says, no. Well, we need to find the bottom of this because we've weighed the butter here and it doesn't weigh a pound anymore. How do you weigh your butter? And the farmer said, well, I'm a poor man. I've never been able to afford a set of weights. So I just every week go down to the baker and buy the 1 pound loaf of bread, and I've used that to measure my butter. Baker, of course, had to swallow quite hard at that because he was the one accusing the farmer of cheating him of selling less and less butter. Well, what happened? Diverse weights, diverse measures, judging others differently. Beware. because that false balance, it's built into us. That double standard, that's how we think naturally. Beware of the double standard, fight against it. But we will go offline for our time of praise and prayer tonight.